now. That track was called Purusha. Is that how you pronounce it, Gal? I'm asking before I even introduce you.
I actually don't know, but I say parousia, but
Parousia.
the nearest Greek person would probably slap me for saying that, but that's just how I say it.
Well, thank you for the explanation before the introduction. Welcome, Gao the Arsonist. The reason why I was struggling to say the name is because it means the arrival, does it not?
Basically. I could go on a massive tangent, but let's leave that for later.
It's your arrival, so you can
I'm here, guys.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm so excited to dive into the tracks already. I'm going into their Greek translations, but I'm just gassed. How are you?
I'm good. This is the first time I'm in like a radio booth, so I'm a little jittery. Thank you. I feel welcome. This is very cool.
It's a warm little home, rather than a sludgy cave.
Yeah, no, I can get down with this though.
Sweet. Yeah. So tell the listeners of the Sesh, who may be meeting you for the first time, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
So my name is Gao the Arsonist. I am a UK-based alternative hip-hop artist, even though that's a little broad. But
broad is good.
Yeah, broad is good. We can narrow down later. But yeah, basically I've been in the dark, grimy depths of the experimental hip-hop world for the last few years. You know, world builder, strange little freak, you name it. But yeah, that's what we do here.
Fantastic. And you're currently on tour. We've just been to Bristol together, which was very fun.
I mean, I put tour in quotes, you know. I feel like the tour life is far too strenuous for a guy like me, you know. I'm very laid back, very chill. The whole like multiple shows a week thing doesn't jive with me. So I'm just doing one cool show a month and calling it a tour, you know.
No, I think that's the dream. That is the dream.
I'm still recovering from Bristol as we speak.
Well, while we live in the present and we're recovering in the present, let's go back to the very beginning. I want to know, growing up, was music central to you?
Man, I feel like any musician that you ask is going to have the same cliche answer, you know? Like,
No, it's personal.
You think so?
Yeah.
Maybe the details, but, you know, I've grown up alongside music my entire life, basically. But I guess maybe in a unique way.
Also,
you know, I made music as early as I remember. Like, my parents got me this like tiny blue acoustic guitar when I was 5, and I've been like writing shitty like pop songs and love songs since I was really, really young. But even though I was like deeply in love with making music, I didn't really consume music until I was 13. Like, I grew up in a super conservative Christian household, so the only music that was played around me was kind of like gospel songs, and it's not something I would like actively go out of my way to listen to. But, you know, in church, I was like in the band. I like played bass for the worship team, and yeah, that was kind of like, yeah, that was my entire world musically when it came to like listening and consumption.
Did the songs that you were making, you said you were making like pop songs?
Yeah, I guess like contemporary like Christian music, a lot of it is just kind of takes like the scraps of the pop industry from the last like 10 years and like kind of regurgitates it.
With a different message.
Yeah. And I think that sounds a bit harsh, but honestly, like, I feel like a lot of Christian music is very emotionally compelling. I feel like it distills down a lot of what made things emotionally resonant in like the secular world, and then adding that kind of dimension of spirituality and like purpose or whatever, like it can really cut deep. And I feel like that's probably more impactful in like my musical background than I'd like to admit, you know.
That's really interesting. I think something I want to go into a bit more later is about how your music really, really affects people. It has a very profound effect. So it's interesting to hear from an early age, even if maybe sonically the kind of tools you had and were playing with weren't like what you would eventually love.
Yeah.
Those effects and that like profound kind of
Yeah.
effectiveness and
Yeah,
power
yeah.
was there from the beginning.
Yeah, probably shaped me. Yeah.
But the song that you've brought with you that shaped you growing up, it's not gospel.
Yeah, no, not at all.
It's a gospel for some, you could say. It's definitely a gospel for me.
Yeah.
It's Yonkers by Tyler, the Creator. Where is the departure from the gospel, and how did you even come across Tyler, the Creator?
You know, maybe like framing it like this is pretty insightful for me now, because I never really thought how my initial musical background may have kind of propelled me to like, you know, really gravitate towards the kind of like transgressive nature of, you know, Tyler's early work. But how did I find Tyler, the Creator? This is a very embarrassing story that no one has ever heard. Okay, so I discovered him in 2017, just after Flower Boy was released. Here I am scrolling through YouTube, where my only like real exposure to consuming music at this point is like EDM, like house music.
So you were on the internet, but you were like in the EDM realms.
Yeah, like when I was 13, I moved to China, and the close people around me were musicians and DJs, but they were kind of in the house world, so that rubbed off on me. And I stumbled across a Rick and Morty parody of Who Dat Boy by Tyler, the Creator, and I've never said this to anyone for good reason, I think. But beyond the sheer, you know, ridiculousness of what I just saw,
that's a beauty.
The production immediately hooked me. Like there was something so like off kilter and just like disconcerting about that beat, that made me look for like what this actually was. And then immediately I fell into the world of Odd Future. I did like my homework religiously on those early Odd Future tapes, you know, Earl Sweatshirt, Tyler, the Creator. And there was something about that rawness, that, you know, DIY, like infectious quality about it that just grabbed me, and was, I think the sole moment that I would point to that kind of like set me on the path to becoming who I am now as a musician, as an artist. But yeah,
I had the same thing with a video. Well, actually, seeing a picture of Tyler, the Creator on Tumblr.
Oh, yeah.
There's something about those guys. There's something so arresting, and then you fall into it is the right word.
For sure.
But I mean, I'm all for playing memes and getting confused by memes. I played a song on the show the other week that I only knew from a meme, and then when I found the real version, I was like, "This isn't right." Yeah, let's listen to Yonkers.
Let's do it.
Reminisce. Let's do it. We were just talking before we got on air about what a pivotal time this was, and it's interesting that you weren't listening to it when it was coming out. You were.
I mean, I was like. I was barely a person at that time. I was a bit on the younger side in 2011, you know what I mean?
When were you born?
2002.
Okay. Well, Tyler is there for each generation, and that's what we love. Can I quickly ask you? No, I'll ask you afterwards. Let's just enjoy Yonkers for now.
I'm a fucking walking paradox. No, I'm not. Threesomes with a fucking triceratops. Repped hard, rapping as I'm mocking deaf rock stars. Wearing synthetic wigs made of anwars, dreadlocks, bedrock, harder than a motherfucking Flintstone. Making crack rocks out of pussy nigga fish bones. This nigga Jasper tryna get grown. About 5'7" of his bitches in my bedroom. Swallow the cinnamon, I'ma scribble this shit and shit while Sid is telling me that she's been getting intimate with men. Sid, shut the fuck up. Here's the number to my therapist. You tell him all your problems, he's fucking awesome with listening. said he's sick of the disses. I told him to quit bitching. This isn't a fucking hotline for a fucking shrink. Sheesh, I already got mine, and he's not fucking working. I think I'm wasting my damn time. I'm clocking 3 past 6 and going postal. This the revenge of the dicks. That's 9 cocks that cock 9. This ain't no V-Tech shit or Columbine, but after bowling, I went home for some damn adventure time. What you do? I slipped myself some pink zannies and danced around the house and all over print panties. My mom's going, that fucking broad will never understand me. I'm not gay, I just want to boogie to some Marvin. What you think I hated you? Fuck her, Wolf Haley robbing them. I'll crash that fucking airplane at that faggot nigga Bob is in and stab Bruno Mars in his goddamn esophagus and won't stop until the cops come in. I'm an overachiever, so how about I start a team of leaders and pick up Stevie Wonder to be the wide receiver. Green paper, gold teeth, and pregnant gold retrievers, all I want. Fuck money, diamonds, and bitches don't need them. But where the fat ones at? I got something to feed them. It's some cooking books, the black kids never wanted to read them.
So, it was 2017. You had just discovered Tyler, the Creator. You were living in China. You're still living with your parents?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was 15.
Well, it's a big leap. I want to know the backstory of what happened.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess it's nothing super exciting, but, you know, I was born and raised in Essex, Basildon, and then when I was 12, my dad was like, yeah, we're going to China. He got an international teaching job at a secondary school in Beijing, and my entire life was kind of uprooted for the next 6 years. And yeah, that's how it happened.
So you still found a way to find music? You said
Yeah.
you found DJs.
Oh, that's the
musicians.
thing. Like, the school that I went to is technically a British international school. Very preppy, but I could go because my dad was a teacher. I got in for free. But the people around me were from like all over the world. Like even, you know, the majority of the kids being from like China or Korea or, you know, that kind of region of East Asia. A lot of them were also like Canadian, like American, or at least, you know, had cultural exposure to the Western world. So I kind of got like a really interesting cultural mix of music exposed to me in those early days compared to if I had stayed in the UK. But what's funny is my best friend who kind of exposed me to the world of electronic music and production and by proxy, like hip hop, he was also showing me grime as well. So I was there bumping Tyler, the Creator, and like JME as well. And yeah, it was like a whole like melting pot of influences that kind of informed who I became musically.
So that was all feeding in. And we first met on Reddit. I think we met on Reddit.
Oh my goodness.
In 2019.
I remember that.
I remember seeing, I had that effect that you just said with the Tyler video, with your video. I was like, what is this?
What video was it? Do you remember?
It was AM. I think you posted it on.
Really? Oh my god.
It was on Indie Music Feedback, or maybe it was a song just before that. But AM became the thing where I loved it.
Oh wow.
So I want to know what was going on your side of the computer. Where were you? Geez. How was Gao the Arsonist forming over those years? So
I think that was the year where, you know, Gao the Arsonist was kind of being born from the sludge.
What was it like?
It was alienating for a long time. You know, being in the kind of tail end of the blog era, I was kind of desperately trying to find new listeners, new collaborators, and I spent hours of time on the internet kind of like scraping through like my influences and finding musicians that were influenced by my influences to see if I could build some semblance of a community around like this music that was so dear to me, right? I remember my best friend, shout out Empty Sentiment, you know, because who did the tapes. I actually met him while combing through Chester Watson's SoundCloud followers. I don't know if you're familiar with his music.
No.
But yeah, it's very early Odd Future inspired, kind of that grimy, kind of like boom bap adjacent world. And that's kind of how I met so many of my close friends. And I think on Reddit, what it was is I sent out a post on like some subreddits kind of trying to rally together some kind of community, like either in the UK or internationally. And I'm sure that's where we met at some point during that time period.
That's a really interesting approach. Is it like, because a lot of people, I think, obviously when it's your art and it would be very focused on yourself, but to think, no, from the very beginning, no, I can't do this alone.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I don't just need people to show it to. I need musicians to show it to.
Oh, yeah.
To collaborate with, to make strengthen a foundation.
100%. I think at the time, while I was still kind of like learning the ropes of like the underground music community, the closest semblance of a community I found was a very prevalent lo-fi hip-hop community. I don't know how exposed to that you are, but it's like
only the video girl, she's on her computer.
But like a bunch of producers who also did love that kind of early Odd Future sound, but kind of just took it in a different direction. Wilf was most definitely one of those kids with like Wilf Merson with his like SP 404 drum machine. But it wasn't quite right, you know. I knew there had to be other people like me, like floating around on the internet, and like stories like how Odd Future formed, or like how Brockhampton formed, that very like internet-based network and community. I was like, I need to at least do some legwork to try to make this happen. And it never did, like, entirely. You know, there is no sludge Brockhampton, but I think I found a lot of, you know, familiar faces, close collaborators, people whose art I'm genuinely invested in. I feel like we have a very similar kind of creative ethos that kind of binds us together. But
regardless of where you are in the world.
Yeah, definitely.
That's super interesting, because you do have a very invested fan base, and I wanted to know more about how you built that, because I think the way, and it's a strange like departure that we find ourselves in. I think, when did you start making Gao the Arsonist? Like 2018, 2019?
I'd say like I properly started in 2019. Yeah, when I released my first mixtape. I'm retroactively not calling it an album anymore.
I think it's good to we still respect the early work.
For sure.
I think we found ourselves kind of at the edge of two eras, because the whole way the internet was working totally shifted. And seeing people like Odd Future, lots of collectives, Awful Records I loved, and then they did have this community. But what was it like for you? Because you didn't even have people maybe in your area interested.
Oh yeah, not at all. I had like no one interested for the longest time. But I remember it was 2020 when I really sat down and was like, okay, something needs to change. And I thought about like all of the artists that I loved and looked up to and inspired me. And I kind of realized that, at least in some capacity, if you're invested in an artist, you're invested in something that's kind of larger than life, if that makes sense. And I took a look at myself and I was like, I'm very life-sized, you know, as a person, you know. I'm a very like laid back person. I always said like I don't really have like a famous face, you know what I mean? But if people are gonna buy into what I'm doing, I need to like build that kind of persona. And I remember that's when I fucking bought a gas mask. Like I was like, I'm just gonna start like crafting this character, because, you know, world building was always something that I had loved. I always loved film. I always loved lore. You know, as a kid, I would
tell me what was in your mind. What was the starting points that you kind of were feeding from, or feeding you?
You know, I'd love to sit here and say like I had everything planned out from the very beginning and I could see the future, but it wasn't like that at all. It was like a very slow kind of construction, and, you know, different ideas for this world kind of came to me piece by piece. Investment from my fan base, my community, the way they interacted with me kind of built some of the mythos, some of the lore. And yeah, as I always say, the sludgeverse is expanding, and that's just kind of what happened over the years. You know,
tell me about the sludgeverse. We've reached a kind of point with this project where you've been teasing us little bits of lore online, and I've been reading them, and it's a really, really interesting to see how far it's developed from what you were talking about in just a few years. Like, so we find ourselves with this project in the crater of God's footprints in a city called Gomorrah, which has been crushed. Please do correct me if I've misunderstood this. It's been crushed into carbon and is being mined.
Basically. So yeah, this kind of eldritch entity like materializes on Earth in a residential area, and you know the impact compresses people into coal, and then there's this giant like conglomerate mining corporation called Vuno that comes in and sets up mining infrastructure, and then it grows to like a company town, and then this kind of like expands to this dystopian like industrial hellscape called Gomorrah. And yeah, they're mining for our bodies.
And they're mining the bodies of the people who were there before.
Exactly.
And that in itself is such an interesting concept. And I think about it a lot, but I was thinking about it. I just had a thought the other day. I was like, we really just we just mess things up as human beings. And kind of the idea of, in the sight of a tragedy, immediately looking at the opportunity for
to exploit.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And mining the bodies of the people. What was the town like that lived there, that was there before, which was crushed?
Beforehand, I think I have very like, I don't like to give all the answers at once, but the very like abstract idea is that it was kind of like a stand-in for like contemporary Western society, you know. I feel like right now we're kind of like on a precipice of a decline into fascism. Can I say that on here?
Please say
yeah.
What you think.
But yeah, that was kind of from like a storytelling perspective where the world was, even though in universe it was set kind of in the 40s. I think a lot of the values reflect where we are right now, and then post Parousia, which is the event of that tragedy, everything kind of just declined even more rapidly into where I believe we are currently heading, unfortunately. But
so we're headed for Gomorrah, or maybe we're already in it.
You know, making political satire is the most depressing thing, because every time I try to exaggerate what I currently see, something real happens that just matches it. Yeah, literally. Like, you can't satirize what is just happening. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is a little demoralizing, but I guess I don't know if that makes it more effective or less effective, but you know, I'm still grappling with.
I guess you're still living in the present.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I guess music's a good therapy way of dealing with things as they go on.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes if it can't be a cautionary tale, it can at least be a mirror where you can, you know, deconstruct things and like figure out like why it's happening and like what we're supposed to do about it.
I think that's the amazing power of storytelling.
Oh yeah,
films,
for sure.
And if you think how much I've learnt from films or like novels and ways of seeing and imagining different ways things could be. And Gao the Arsonist is one of the miners at the bottom of society.
Yeah, exactly.
And Gao is a perspective that you take in a lot of the songs, but he's not the only perspective. Yes,
exactly. I feel like Gao is quite unabashedly like a self-insert. I feel like a lot of Gao's perspective is aligned with my perspective, not 100% of the time. But all of the different perspectives of the characters in Sludge Bath, which is the comic series that is kind of parallel. Yeah, they're all kind of like different like fragments of myself and different perspectives that like reside within me. Sometimes they're like in direct opposition to what I believe, or like, you know, take ideas that I'm kind of in conflict with, and they kind of just like embody those concepts. And
I think it's important to look at things you despise and embody things you despise.
Yeah, for sure.
And work out why you hate them.
I feel like you need to kind of like own the bad thoughts sometimes, and kind of like dissect them, kind of see like how they came about, what you're supposed to do with them afterwards. I feel like the reason why so many horrible things can happen multiple times over is because we think that we're too removed from those things that happen, right? We say like, oh, I'd never do that, or this could never happen under my watch.
Yeah.
And you would kind of ignore it. And then what happens?
And I think the small things, it's ignoring the small things and not wanting to be involved. And then, so when the big thing happens, you've already ignored the other things.
Yeah.
So it's easier.
Exactly.
And I'm so excited to listen to some of the songs from the album, but I just want to fully understand the point at which we begin this album or find ourselves situated in it. Gao is a miner at the bottom of society. He's in a mine full of the bodies or the essence of people who lived before and the essence of ideals of and ideologies of openness. And he's mining that. What does the mine smell like?
What does the mine smell like?
Yeah.
So
is it cold? Is it hot?
Call me a poser, but I've never been in a mine. So unfortunately I couldn't tell you exactly what the coal mines smell like. But there are the promethanol mines, which is kind of this, reality warping, like primordial substance. And I think in one of the Q&As for the comic book, someone asked like what it smelled like. I think I said something like, it smells like how TV static looks.
Okay. And
yeah.
And he's mining for promethanol.
Initially he's just a coal miner, but then the miners are often coerced into doing this more kind of nefarious mining of this, supernatural substance.
The sludge.
Yeah, the sludge.
The sludgeverse in which we find ourselves. Well, thank you. I feel like I'm in the mine. Is it warm or cold?
Imagine, do you like cold places or warm places?
Imagine the worst place, and I'm inside itchy TV static.
Yeah,
and
just imagine that. Yeah,
12 hours a day. I think that is a good vision to listen, to keep in mind while we listen to some songs. A song that I really love, and I want to ask you about it, is Gunslinger. The video is like amazing.
Shout out Zach Watson, people.
Yeah, I need to look him up because I was seeing his credit appeared a lot. You do have very like dramatic visuals. Is that all done like DIY?
Oh yeah, it's just me, Zach, and maybe one other friend that I can rope into what we're doing. Exactly.
Because I was, as a DIY video maker, I was like, damn, this looks really cool. And there's a part where the gun is like attached to the camera, or it looks like that.
Yeah.
Is it actually attached to the
It
camera?
actually is, yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah, it really was.
Introduce this track.
Okay, so Gunslinger is kind of about how, under capitalism, a lot of the time, our self-worth and value is derived from like one thing that we make our thing. You know what I mean? I feel like I struggle a lot. I have struggled in the past and still do with, putting all of my energy and effort and resources behind, building this idea of myself in my head. Like I am Gao, you know what I mean? Yeah. But many years ago, I was, walking with one of my friends, shout out Dr. Skywalker. But he asked me, if you take Gao away, who are you? And I could not answer him at all. And that question had been stuck in my head for years, right? And I feel like Gunslinger poses that very same question. Like, who are you without the thing that tells you that you have worth,
Yeah, there's in the lyrics, I can hear that. I was wondering about that lyric. That's very scary, and I'm going to do my own thinking about that now. I think especially if you are putting parts of yourself out there, like music, as a musician, you're bearing yourself on a wider stage. yeah, you have to protect yourself and find out who you are behind,
100%.
behind that. But I think we all have to do that to some degree. So let's listen to Muse to Gunslinger. Absolute banger. And I feel like I can really hear all of the different, you were saying about growing up with all these different sounds and influences. It's like there's so many different sounds. I can hear like trip hop. There was some guitar which sounded like, I don't know. Tell me about your production process.
Oh geez, for this song specifically or just in general?
Maybe this song is a starter.
Let's start, I guess. I guess before I start, I need to cite Shy High Holiday, which is a kind of like alt hip hop grunge combination, and this song would not exist without Holiday. I heard that, and it kind of coincided with the release of the Batman, where Nirvana's music was kind of brought into the public eye again, and I think those two ideas just like clashed in my head, and I was just thinking about grunge for a really long time. And basically I had been, combing through a bunch of like early like electronic music, and I'm talking about like 1960s here, when they like first invented some of the technology. I feel like the textures are just fucking insane. And I found this specific sound, which is that guitar that you hear, right? Immediately when I heard it, I was like transported to like the Wild West. Like it just sounds like that twangy kind of like Western feel. And I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna make a cowboy grunge track. And that's the way I kind of like jokingly referred to it during the promo.
And talk about killing your ego with
oh yeah, it's looking crazy. But yeah, I immediately made that riff with the synth sounds, laid down like a bass guitar. As I said, I played bass for my worship team when I was young in church. And
so your instruments are live in your track?
Not a lot of them, but sometimes like I want that kind of like organic feel of the bass guitar. So I laid that down, and the song kind of just made itself. Honestly, I wanted to combine, you know, that kind of Western feel, grunge, and like my kind of like jazz rap influences as well. So I think I did a pretty decent job.
Sick.
Yeah.
I think I want to play another song which showcases a different kind of production. Do As I Say. Which I love a loop. I love a loop.
Yeah.
And I saw a comment on the video being like, "Oh, you just gave us a little part of the song," and I was like, "No, the song is complete. Like the beat is complete. We just need that." Tell me about that.
Okay, so you know, I come from hip hop, like there's no doubt about it, and I feel like Do As I Say is probably one of the more polarizing tracks on And They Mind for Our Bodies. Yeah, because I feel like a lot of my fan base is kind of like the intersection between the alternative and the hip hop, right? And Do As I Say is hip hop, like through and through. The looped sample, the way I chop it, the triplet flows. But yeah, my friend, shout out Not Nevi, he found this song from, I want to say, like Swedish. I can't remember, but this European singer called Han Huckelberg. And that was the sample that you hear in that song. And he was sitting on it for a long time. We were trying to collaborate on some music, and we just couldn't find a way to flip it, even though we knew for a fact that once we did, it was flippable, but it just never kind of came about. So it was just sitting on my hard drive. And while I was working on And They Mind for Our Bodies, I think Do As I Say was one of the last songs that I actually worked on. And it just like descended from the heavens, like the way to flip that track. And typically, I think I don't like to add to like a musical conversation unless I feel like I have something new to bring to it. So I never really played around with like loops in that fashion for the longest time, even though I love like, you know, what the abstract hip hop scene was kind of doing for the past. Yeah, of course. But I never really wanted to, you know, pitch into that conversation until now. I was like, there's something so like joyous and like bouncy and fun about the track. And I feel like it allowed me to explore a new avenue, which keeps music fun and fulfilling for me. And yeah, it turned out great. It was like an amazing time making that song. It came together very easily, very intuitively. And I think one of my favorite things about it is you can listen to it, you can bop your head, you can dance to it. But like in typical Gao fashion, when you listen into the lyrics, it's it's a little bit disconcerting, you know.
I wanted to ask about, because I think it's, even just listening to the sample, Do As I Say, Not As I Do, it's a kind of there's a tension.
Yeah, something eerie about it almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like there was a little thing when I saw the Law deep dive, and it was like Gao finds power in being able to suddenly interact with the sludge. And it's not really described whether the power is good or bad. He just now has it.
Yeah. And
I thought that might be an interesting theme of this song, maybe.
It most definitely is, I think. The supernatural abilities that Gao possesses, you know, he can like ignite the sludge, you know. Fire is often very destructive, right? It can cause unimaginable amounts of harm. But, you know, also warmth and light. And citing Prometheus, which is the intro track of my last album, I have a line that says, like humans like twisted warmth into war. And, you know, like we use fire for, you know, life and construction far before we did for harm. And that kind of, is this good for Gao? Is it bad for Gao? This kind of tension is there. And I don't really want to give any answers, but I guess in my experience, that power, that agency that comes in the form of being a musician, being an artist, me deriving my purpose from art. When I say, do as I say and not as I do, I think I'm speaking through Gao and saying, I recognize that this can be unhealthy. Like, I recognize that this can be a path that shouldn't be recommended. I always like to joke and I say I wouldn't recommend this lifestyle to like anyone, honestly.
Is that the pressure of people looking at you for what to do? Or
maybe
your own pressure?
Maybe a little bit, because I think we've spoken before, like how you're kind of seen as this kind of role model, like in the communities that you form. And I feel like no human being is ready for that kind of pressure and responsibility, even though I feel like it is somewhat of an obligation. But I think it primarily comes from the fact that both me and Gao, like, we're constantly like trying to rehabilitate ourselves. Like, we're aware of the right path. You know, we know what a healthy relationship with your work looks like. We know, you know, we're supposed to have inherent worth, but that's so much easier to intellectually hold and to know than to actually enact and live. So, you know, Gao still finds the purpose in his bounty hunting job and the supernatural powers that he has. I still do find purpose and worth in the fact that, you know, I can go and play a show in Bristol, go and play a show in London. You know, people love my music, and I know that's not the way I'm supposed to think, but I'm constantly battling that. So do as I say, not as I do, please.
The Swedish lady's gonna say it. She's gonna tell us.
Now as I say it all and not as I do. So now as I say it all and not as I do. Now as I say it all and not as I do. So now as I say it all and not as I do. Now as I say it all.
Just do what I say. I could never do it like that. Bitch, I know you can take what I say. Like, who know why I chose what I choose. Not all one of this purpose I say. You give me this, the suicide too. I promise you that now they hear when I hit more than one of them pressing. Just do what I say. This is the arsonist.
We will heed the message. During this interview, I think around the time when we were talking about what the mind smells like, I received a mysterious text message from a number I do not have saved, and it said, "What does the mind smell like?" So
Huh.
someone, maybe an employee of the mines, has got my number and is asking me philosophical questions.
They're after you.
So I'm going to direct the question to you. What does the mind smell like?
Like the weight of capitalism on contemporary England. Yeah. That's
Does
what
that
it smells
have a
like.
distinct smell, or is that a shifting smell?
Mm,
Does it smell like exhaust fumes or gravy?
maybe a combination, you know.
A car powered by gravy driving over the edge.
Honestly, I feel like that would be pretty apt. You know, you have like the industrial fumes, and then gravy is very like meaty. You know, it's like the
Oh,
the
no.
human aspect. And yeah, it is very
That's
much
so
driving
cool.
over the edge. So I like that.
Well, thank you. I'll reply that. To the mysterious person. I don't know if it's a code question. Am I being activated as a sleeper agent? And we're going to be part of it. I'm deep in the lore now. I'm going to enter the as a
Yeah,
character.
you're gonna see it in your dreams now. I apologize.
Because we were just talking about while the song was playing, which is very naughty. We must only talk on the mic. Exploring ideas which can be dark, they can be intense, but also having fun. And you do have a lot of fun doing it, you said.
Oh yeah, I definitely do. I think, you know, I a lot of people sometimes come to me and they say, you know, you make very like depressing doomer music. A lot of people put it, but I don't see that. I feel like I'm a fairly optimistic person, but you know, there is a sludge you need to pull yourself out of to be optimistic, right? You know, that's
you have
where
to see it to pull it yourself
exactly,
out. Yeah.
exactly. Like that's the hope aspect. So I feel like it can still be fun to think about like how do you survive this? Like how do you move past, you know, the grime and the filth, you know?
And enjoying it with other people.
Yeah, of
which
course.
you get to do when you share music, but also live.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Which is, it's the most fun part, I think, for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to ask where the album ends. We start like down below, and yeah, where are we when we finish it?
So the outro track is called Phantasm, and I like to kind of describe it as like an act 2 slump. Like that's where the album leaves off. Like Gao feels like defeated. It feels very hopeless. I named it Phantasm because this kind of journey that like the characters and Gao specifically is on throughout the album to kind of, you know, lead a healthier life, to find that, you know, innate sense of self-worth. All of that to him, at the very least, at the end, it feels like it doesn't exist. It's like a sham, like he's failed at the end of the album. And this is very, very early in the works, but I have the kind of narrative map in my head for the next full-length project, the continuation. I want it to be very much like I said, crawling out of that dirt, crawling out of that, you know, grime and filth. And I think it's going to be called Do Not Remain Buried.
Do not remain buried.
So, yeah, the whole sentence for the trilogy would be, our bones are artifacts, and they mine for our bodies. Do not remain buried.
Jeez, I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. I have no music for it yet.
No music,
Yeah.
but an idea and
Yeah.
a name.
Uh-huh.
And something to crawl up towards.
Definitely.
Fantastic. And in the meantime, we have 2 more shows from you.
Oh, yeah. I have a show in Manchester on March 8th and Glasgow May 3rd, I think. So pull up if you want to.
And we'll climb out together.
100%. We will climb out together. I like that.
Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you.
coming on the show, giving us an insight into the world.
My pleasure.
And yeah, it's bloody fantastic. I think I want to finish with a song of yours which you were going to play in Bristol, but due to various technical catastrophes, we didn't get to have the transcendent ending.
Right.
But we can have it now.
Let's do it.
It's called Home.
It's called Home.
Do you want to give it any introduction?
I'll let your imagination fill in the gaps. Honestly, just feel the music.
Feel the music. Feel good about yourself and have a lovely day. This is the Sesh with Retropxssy. Oh no, have we actually got a technical cataclysm?
Oh, no.
My God.
The past repeats itself.
The
I'm
past
telling
repeats
you.
itself. We're never gonna hear Home. You have to go to Manchester and hear it. Instead, we're gonna hear one I've put on it because it's my bloody favourite, Right Between the Eyes.
Oh, thank you. Stay sludged.
Stay sludged. Thank you very much, Karina. Thank you very much, Gao. This has been Retropxssy. I'm going to drop a track on the 27th of February. So stay tuned for that. Beep, beep. Big love.
Never really tried too hard to stay alive. Always trying to stop my own life cut short. Through caution, no being with the cold eyes. Man, I was after daylight and blood sport.